No one likes to be criticized. It's an uncomfortable truth of the human experience. Whether it's a gentle suggestion from a loved one, a performance review at work, or a harsh comment from a stranger online, feedback, especially when it points out our flaws, can trigger a cascade of emotions. Our ego, our deeply ingrained beliefs, and our reactive mind often take over, leading us down predictable, yet unhelpful, paths. But what if understanding these reactions could be the first step towards a more compassionate, insightful response? What if criticism, instead of being a source of pain, could become a profound opportunity for self-discovery and growth? Let's explore 5 common ways people react when faced with criticism, and how these reactions often stem from our ego, fixed views, and reactive mind. 1. Defensiveness, the shield of the ego. Reaction. This is perhaps the most common response. When criticized, our immediate instinct is to defend ourselves, to explain away our actions, or to shift blame. We might argue, make excuses, or even counterattack the critic. The underlying message is, I am not wrong, you are. Buddhist lens, ego. This defensiveness is a classic manifestation of ego. Our ego, clinging to a self-image of being competent, flawless, or always right, feels threatened. Criticism is perceived as an attack on this self-image, and the ego rises to protect itself. We become so identified with our actions or beliefs that any critique feels like a personal assault on our very being. This prevents us from truly hearing the feedback, as our energy is consumed by self-preservation. Example: imagine Alex, a seasoned project manager, receives feedback that his team feels he micromanages. His immediate response is, I'm not micromanaging, I'm ensuring quality. They just don't understand the complexity of these projects. He might then list all the times his meticulousness saved a project, effectively dismissing the team's feelings. 2. Blame shifting, the projection of insecurity. Reaction: instead of taking responsibility, we project the fault onto others or external circumstances. It's not my fault, it's theirs, or the system is broken, or I didn't have enough resources. Buddhist lens, fixed views and reactive mind. This reaction often stems from a combination of fixed views and reactive mind. Our fixed view might be that we are inherently good or incapable of error, so the fault must lie elsewhere. The reactive mind, seeking to avoid discomfort or perceived inadequacy, quickly finds an external target for blame. This prevents self-reflection and growth, as we never truly engage with our role in the situation. Example: Sarah, a sales executive, misses her quarterly target. When her manager points this out, she immediately blames the new marketing campaign for not generating enough leads, or the economy for being slow, rather than examining her own sales strategies or efforts. 3. Withdrawal/silence, the retreat of vulnerability. Reaction: some people respond to criticism by shutting down, becoming silent, or withdrawing emotionally. They might nod along, but internally, they are disengaging, feeling hurt, resentful, or overwhelmed. This can manifest as passive aggressiveness or simply a refusal to engage further. Buddhist lens, ego and reactive mind. This withdrawal is often a defense mechanism of the ego when it feels too vulnerable or overwhelmed to defend itself actively. The reactive mind chooses avoidance as a way to escape the discomfort of the situation. While it might seem like acceptance, it's often a form of internal resistance, preventing genuine processing of the feedback and leading to festering resentment or unaddressed issues. Example: David, a graphic designer, receives critical feedback on a logo design. He simply says, "Okay," and retreats to his desk, but internally, he feels deeply hurt and decides he will never ask for feedback from that person again, and might even subtly resist implementing the suggestions. 4. Over-apologizing/self-flagellation, the burden of guilt. Reaction: on the opposite end of the spectrum from defensiveness, Some individuals respond by excessively apologizing, taking on all the blame, and engaging in self-deprecating talk. They might internalize the criticism to an unhealthy degree, believing they are fundamentally flawed. Buddhist lens, ego and reactive mind. While seemingly humble, this can also be a manifestation of ego in a different form, a desire to be seen as a good person who takes responsibility, or a deep-seated insecurity that leads to self-punishment. The reactive mind quickly jumps to guilt and self-condemnation, often to preempt further criticism or to seek reassurance. This prevents genuine self-compassion and balanced self-assessment. Example: Maria makes a small mistake in a presentation. When her boss points it out, she profusely apologizes, saying, "Oh, I'm so stupid. I always mess things up. I'm so sorry. I should have checked it 100 times." She continues to beat herself up long after the incident. 5. Intellectualization/rationalization. The trap of the mind. Reaction. We might analyze the criticism logically, dissecting it, finding flaws in the critic's argument, or rationalizing why the criticism isn't valid. We engage with the content intellectually, but avoid the emotional impact or the deeper implications for our behavior. Buddhist lens, fixed views and reactive mind. This is a sophisticated defense mechanism often rooted in fixed views about our own intelligence or competence, and the reactive mind using intellect to avoid discomfort. We create elaborate mental constructs to protect ourselves from the uncomfortable truth that we might have made a mistake or have a blind spot. This prevents genuine learning and transformation, as we remain trapped in our own mental frameworks. Example: John, a brilliant engineer, receives feedback that his communication style is too technical and alienates non-technical colleagues. He responds by explaining the logical necessity of his precise language, citing engineering principles, and concluding that his colleagues simply need to learn the vocabulary, rather than considering how he might adapt his communication for different audiences. Bridge to wisdom. These 5 reactions, while seemingly different, share a common root. They are driven by our ego's need to protect itself, our fixed views about ourselves and the world, and our reactive mind's aversion to discomfort. They prevent us from truly engaging with feedback, hindering our growth and perpetuating cycles of misunderstanding and suffering. But what if there was another way? What if we could move beyond these automatic, often unhelpful, responses and cultivate a more skillful, compassionate way of engaging with criticism? Ancient wisdom, particularly the Buddhist teachings on anatta, non-self, samadhi, right view, and metta, loving kindness/compassion, offers a profound path to transform our relationship with criticism, turning it from a threat into a powerful catalyst for genuine self-awareness and profound personal evolution. A Buddhist perspective. Our habitual reactions to criticism are deeply rooted in the 3 poisons: lobha, greed/clinging to self-image; dosa, aversion/anger towards the critic or the criticism; and moha, delusion/ignorance about the nature of self and reality. These manifest as ego, fixed views, and reactive mind. The path to transforming these reactions lies in cultivating their antidotes: non-self, right view, and compassion. The 4 noble truths of reacting to criticism. 1. The truth of suffering. Dukkha. The suffering is evident in the internal turmoil, anger, hurt, resentment, guilt, anxiety, that arises when we are criticized and react unskillfully. This suffering is not caused by the criticism itself, but by our clinging to a fixed self-image and our aversion to discomfort or perceived inadequacy. 2. The truth of the origin of suffering. Samadhi. The origin of this suffering lies in our tanha, craving/clinging, to a self that is always right, always good, or always competent. It is fueled by avidya, ignorance, of anatta, non-self, the illusion that there is a solid, unchanging self to defend. Our fixed views about ourselves and the situation, and our reactive mind to perceived threats perpetuate this suffering. 3. The truth of the cessation of suffering. Nirodha, the cessation of this suffering, comes from letting go of the clinging to a fixed self-image and the aversion to discomfort. It arises from cultivating non-self, understanding that there is no permanent, separate self to defend, and that our identity is fluid and interconnected. It also involves developing right view, seeing things as they truly are, free from the distortions of ego and fixed views, and compassion, extending kindness to ourselves and others, even in moments of perceived criticism. 4. The truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. Magga, this path is the Noble Eightfold Path, which guides us in cultivating wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline to respond to criticism with grace, insight, and compassion, transforming it into an opportunity for profound growth. The Noble Eightfold Path to skillful response. Right view, samadhi, towards right view. This is the understanding that criticism, while uncomfortable, can be a valuable mirror. It's seeing that our ego's defensiveness is a conditioned response, not an inherent truth. It's the understanding of anatta, non-self, that there is no fixed, unchanging self to be attacked or defended. With right view, we see criticism not as a personal assault, but as information, a data point, or a perspective that may or may not be accurate, but is always worth examining without immediate judgment. Right intention, samma-sakkappa, towards non-self. Instead of intending to defend our ego or blame others, our intention shifts to understanding, learning, and cultivating compassion. For example, when criticized, our intention can be to genuinely understand the other person's perspective, to learn from the feedback, and to respond with kindness, rather than to prove ourselves right or make the other person wrong. Right speech, samma-vaka, towards compassion. This involves responding to criticism with words that are truthful, kind, helpful, and timely, rather than defensive, blaming, or aggressive. It means avoiding harsh words, gossip, or divisive speech. For example, instead of arguing, we might say, "Thank you for sharing that. I need some time to reflect on what you've said." Right action, samma-kamanta, towards non-self. This means engaging in actions that are ethical and non-harming, even when feeling attacked. It involves refraining from retaliatory actions or passive-aggressive behaviors. For example, instead of withdrawing or subtly sabotaging, we might actively seek clarification or offer to work together on a solution. Right livelihood, samarajiva, towards right view. This involves ensuring that our way of life and our interactions are conducive to growth and understanding, rather than perpetuating conflict or misunderstanding. It means creating an environment where constructive feedback is welcomed and given skillfully. Right effort, samma-vayama, towards compassion. This is the effort to prevent unskillful reactions, like defensiveness, blame, withdrawal, or self-flagellation, from arising, and to cultivate skillful responses, like openness, curiosity, and compassion. It's the continuous effort to bring awareness to our reactions and gently guide them towards a more wholesome path. Right mindfulness, samasati, towards non-self. This is the practice of being fully present with the sensations, thoughts, and emotions that arise when we are criticized, without immediately reacting. It's observing the ego's urge to defend, the mind's tendency to blame, or the body's tension, without identifying with them. This allows us to create a space between the stimulus, criticism, and our response, giving us the freedom to choose a skillful reaction. Right concentration, samma-samadhi, towards right view and compassion. Through sustained mindfulness and right effort, we can develop a deeper state of mental calm and focus. This allows us to gain clarity, see the situation more objectively, and respond from a place of wisdom and compassion, rather than from a place of reactivity or ego-driven defense. When faced with criticism, The path to genuine growth and inner peace lies not in avoiding it, but in transforming our relationship with it. Here's how to cultivate a more skillful and compassionate response. 1. Pause and breathe. Mindfulness before reacting. Take a deep breath. Create a small space between the criticism and your response. This simple act can interrupt the automatic, ego-driven reaction and allow mindfulness to arise. 2. Listen with curiosity, not defense. Right view and intention approach the feedback with an open mind. Try to genuinely understand the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it. Ask clarifying questions. Remember, their perception is their reality, and there might be a kernel of truth you can learn from. 3. Recognize the ego's play. Non-self, observe your internal reactions, the defensiveness, the urge to blame, the hurt. Recognize these as conditioned responses of the ego, not as your true self. This detachment allows you to process the feedback without taking it personally. 4. Practice self-compassion. It's okay to feel uncomfortable or hurt. Extend kindness to yourself in that moment. Acknowledge your feelings without judgment. This self-compassion prevents self-flagellation and allows for a more balanced self-assessment. 5. Reflect and discern. Right view and effort after the initial conversation. Take time to reflect. Is the criticism valid? Is there something you can learn? Discard what doesn't resonate, but genuinely consider what does. This is where true growth happens. 6. Respond skillfully, not reactively. Right speech and action if a response is needed. Choose your words carefully. Be truthful, respectful, and constructive. Focus on solutions or understanding, rather than justification or blame. Sometimes, the most skillful response is simply, "Thank you for the feedback. I will reflect on it." 7. Cultivate a growth mindset. View criticism as an opportunity for improvement, not a judgment of your worth. Every piece of feedback, even poorly delivered, contains potential for learning. When the mirror of criticism is held up, do you instinctively shield yourself, or do you bravely look within? Is your identity so fragile that it shatters with a single word, or is it fluid enough to embrace imperfection and continuous evolution? What if the greatest strength isn't in being flawless, but in the courage to acknowledge our blind spots and transform them into wisdom? The world often praises those who are always right, but true mastery lies in the humility to learn, the wisdom to discern, and the compassion to grow. If this message resonates with your own journey of navigating feedback and seeking deeper self-awareness, share it with someone who might be silently grappling with the sting of criticism and the profound desire to turn it into a catalyst for genuine personal transformation. Let's build a community where feedback is seen not as a threat, but as a gift, and where every challenge becomes an opportunity to cultivate a more skillful, compassionate, and truly awakened self. Namaste.